Welcome to Crime Over Wine Weekly. It's Monday, August 5th. I'm Michelle Heron. Here are your crime headlines. The legal battle between Micah Miller's family and her husband is now over. The South Carolina pastor and his late wife's family agreed to an undisclosed settlement. Micah died by suicide 10 days after filing for separation from her husband, J.P. Miller. Micah's family speculated alleged psychological abuse from her husband led to Micah's death. After deliberating for 6 hours, a jury found Ashley Benefield guilty of manslaughter in the death of her husband. The jury found the former ballerina guilty of the lesser charge for fatally shooting her husband, Navy veteran Doug Benefield, inside their Florida home in 2020. Prosecutors claimed the shooting was planned, while Ashley said she acted in self-defense. A man accused of killing a Georgia nursing student will go on trial in November. A judge set the trial date for Jose Ibarra during a status hearing on Friday. Ibarra faces life in prison without the possibility of parole in the murder of 22-year-old Laken Riley, a nursing student who was killed while jogging on the University of Georgia campus. Hello and welcome to another episode of Crime Over Wine Weekly, your place to get caught up on all of the latest crime headlines while sipping on your new favorite bottle of wine. This week, we are joined by the ever-so-lovely Heather Holley. Heather, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for asking, and thanks for calling me lovely. How are you?
Yes, I am doing good. And so right before we started recording this, Heather, in our group chat with Liam, shared a a find at a yard sale, and you have to share what you found because it's the most Heather Holley item in on the face of this planet.
Okay, not just any yard sale. It was at the world's longest yard sale, and it's a reprint. Like it's not actually legitimate, but it's a glass sign with the like old lettering on it. It says psychiatric ward entrance. So welcome.
It is like the just that was made for Heather to find. And if you've never heard of it, so there is something called the world's longest yard sale. It goes along a really long highway that stretches, I think it's like some 700 miles, and it goes right through the area where we live. And it's kind of like one of those things that towards the end of summer, it's held, and you just gotta go because you will find the most craziest and wacky, unique things. It brings people from all different parts of the country just to go antiquing and see what they can find. And that was your find, right, Heather?
It was one of them. I found a few other less exciting things, but that was my prize find of the year, and I'm very excited for it.
Well, I'm glad that you found it. Like I said, it was the most number one Heather Holley thing, so we had to talk about it. Another thing that we can talk about is this week's wine, because I'm so excited about this find. So we're doing Chardonnay this week by it's a brand called Freakshow. It's made by Michael David Winery. I had never heard of them, but the label will catch your eye if you're kind of into interesting wine bottle labels. This one definitely takes the cake. So it's called Freakshow Chardonnay. It's described as having a playful zest that will tantalize any sailor she comes across. Golden straw in color, her alluring aromas of apricot, citrus fruit, and herbalicious notes accentuate mouthwatering flavors of Asian pear, honeydew, and juicy peach pie. With a lasting oak-inspired finish, she will leave you with no choice but to dive back in for more. And so you're kind of getting like kind of nautical like vibes here, and that's because on the front there is a beautiful picture of a mermaid, and then also all around it it kind of goes with the theme of Freakshow. It's got like the traveling circus kind of theme all over it. I was hoping that they had more about the story behind the label, but they didn't. But it's nice to look at. So Heather, here's my glass. You ready to cheers?
I am.
Okay,
Cheers.
let's try out Freakshow Chardonnay. It's definitely oaky. It's got that Chardonnay oakiness to it. It doesn't smell good. I will say that.
I was gonna say it does. It smells like fruit juice, but not like appealing fruit juice. Like, like if
It's
your
all right.
toddler's sippy cup got lost in the car with apple juice in it for a while.
So kind of as we like sip on this for a second, I have to tell you the story of how I came across this wine. So a new liquor store just opened up around where I live. And so I stopped in there to, yesterday, I stopped in there to try and find another wine and just kind of check out this new place because it's pretty large and I just kind of wanted to see what all they had. And they had several folks working and they were all like just so helpful and greeted you and, you know, things like that. And so I came across one of the people who worked there. Her name is Anne, and she was just wonderful. I was showing her a different wine that I was looking for, and she was like, no, we don't have that here. But they had like an app that she was able to search and see if it was somewhere else, you know? And she also offered to like try and get the wine in a couple days, but I had waited too long and I needed it within 24 hours. But anyway, so she was like, well, let me text my distributor. And so as we're kind of like waiting there, we kind of get to talking as to like why I need like this very specific wine like right now. And I told her about the podcast. And so like right there, she pulls out her phone and she goes and she looks up Crime Over Wine Weekly and she like starts following it so that she can start listening to episodes. And she's like, now, are you Michelle or are you Heather? And I was like, I'm Michelle. And she was just amazing. And so I was like, it turns out that the other wine that I was there for is discontinued now. So, so she was like, and the other one that I was looking for was a Chardonnay. She was like, well, if you want to kind of stay around the Chardonnay, and I had mentioned to her like how we really liked the Prophecy wines and their labels. She was like, if you want something kind of with like a cool label, she pointed to the Freakshow one. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, yes. I was like, that is a really cool bottle and I want to look more into it and I definitely want to try it. So shout out to Anne at Hilltop Bottle Shop for just going above and beyond. She didn't have to do all this searching and texting her distributor and all of that for me, but she did, and that was just really nice. And she was just pleasant to talk to, and I hope that she's listening this week.
Hi, Anne. Thanks for being nice and helping.
Yes, definitely. I have a feeling they're gonna be some of my new friends. But anyway, so aside from that story, we have a lot to tell you about this week.
Yeah, coming up after the break, a 40-year-old cold case in Michigan has been reopened. Plus, the Pennsylvania man accused of decapitating his father and posting a video online will stand trial. The testimony that led to the judge's decision next.
Crime Over Wine is sponsored by BetterHelp. As someone who's used therapy for years, I know that finding a therapist can sometimes be a stress on its own, juggling your full-time job, your family, your friends, your podcast, and trying to find the right therapist on top of that can almost feel impossible. That's where BetterHelp comes in. BetterHelp matches you with a therapist that works for you on your terms. It's online, it's remote, and by filling out a few questions, BetterHelp can match you to one of 33,000 licensed professional therapists in as little as a few days. And because finding a new therapist is a lot like finding a new bottle of wine, if you don't jive with your therapist, you can easily switch to a new one at no additional cost. You can get 10% off your first month of BetterHelp by going to betterhelp.com/crimeoverwine. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/crimeoverwine for 10% off your first month. Join over 4 million people who decided to get help and get happy with BetterHelp.
Authorities in Michigan have reopened the cold case of a teenager who went missing nearly 40 years ago. Cassandra Durham was 19 when she was reported missing after traveling from Maryland to Michigan to visit her boyfriend's family in August of 1987. The FBI says Cassandra and her boyfriend left their home in Baltimore to visit his grandparents. She did not tell her family where they were going after the visit. The FBI says when her boyfriend returned to Maryland, Cassandra was not with him. The boyfriend claims they both returned to Maryland, but Cassandra's dad says she never made it home. Cassandra's last contact was a phone call with her dad in August of 1987. Her boyfriend returned to Maryland around 1988 or 1989, but her dad has not heard from her since. If you have any information, call FBI VICAP at 1-800-634-4097.
The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation has issued a silver alert for a Cumberland County woman who's been missing for more than a month. Roxanne Gallagher was last seen in late June on Dogwood Road. The 69-year-old was last seen wearing a blue t-shirt and jeans. She's about 5'2" and has blue eyes and short blonde hair. She has a medical condition that may make it difficult for her to get back home without help. The TBI says Roxanne may be driving a 2000 Buick LeSabre that's maroon in color. If you know anything about Roxanne's whereabouts, contact the Cumberland County Sheriff's Office at 931-484-6176 or the TBI at 1-800-TBI-FIND. And now going to a case that I hadn't heard about until I was seeing the updates about this hearing this week, but it happened back in January, and it's just blowing my mind. The case against a Pennsylvania man accused of killing and beheading his father earlier this year will move forward. A judge ruled Justin Moan is competent to stand trial after a proceeding that lasted nearly 5 hours. Prosecutors say back in January, Moan shot and killed his father, Michael F. Moan, in their suburban Philadelphia home. He then decapitated his father with a kitchen knife and machete. The gruesome acts allegedly committed by Moan didn't end there. Investigators say the 32-year-old then recorded a video where he held up his father's head, named him, and called for violence against the government. The nearly 15-minute video was posted on YouTube, where it stayed up for about 5 hours before being removed. Authorities located Moan about 2 hours away at a Pennsylvania National Guard training center. He was armed, and the Associated Press reports he was hoping to mobilize troops to, quote, raise arms against the federal government. During last week's hearing, a forensic psychologist testified for the prosecution that Moan objected to his attorney's use of a mental health defense, and that she found him to be intelligent, calm, and socially appropriate. The defense's expert witness said Moan is schizophrenic and later changed his analysis to a delusional disorder, citing Moan's writings where he claimed to be the Messiah. At the beginning of the proceedings, the judge asked Moan if he knew why he was there. He was able to recount his charges. Prosecutors said all of that added up to someone able to stand trial, and the judge agreed. The judge also granted Moan's motion to find a new attorney. Justin Moan is charged with first-degree murder, abusing a corpse, and possessing instruments of crime. He's being held without bond. No word on his next court date.
Wow, that's a lot to process.
That it is. It very much is.
Yeah, I haven't heard of this case at all.
When I started looking it up, I was finding national outlets reporting on it, but somehow I never caught it until now.
That is just crazy. And then the fact that he has been found that he can stand trial. Maybe he was going through some sort of episode during all of this. Something was going on.
So prosecutors have linked him to other posts and stuff that are kind of conspiracy based. His father worked for the federal government, and part of the video, once he identified him, was calling him a traitor to the country, and some of his other posts had included negative comments about the Biden administration and people born in 1990 and later should cause a bloody revolt. So he has some big feelings about some things here. But he also had not a large criminal history, but reporters were able to find where Previous coworkers had orders of protection against him. They spoke to a neighbor, several neighbors, after he was arrested about what happened, and more than one said that they found him to have odd behavior. So it's not like this came out of nowhere, but I don't think anyone necessarily thought he would behead his father.
Yeah. I mean, from, the father's point of view, where, he was probably just trying to support his son in the best way, but it's difficult when you do have a family member that is not well mentally. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and to be clear, he does not have any diagnosed mental illnesses in his history. He legally obtained the gun he had. So while it seems like there very much should be a mental health factor at play here, there's no prior documentation of it. It's just the defense's expert witness, who was a doctor, but I couldn't find what kind of doctor, diagnosing him after meeting him 4 times for this proceeding.
Yeah, interesting case. It will be interesting to see what comes of this when it does go to trial. A lot more coming up on Crime Over Wine Weekly. A reward is now being offered for information in a 17-year cold case. Plus, a divorced couple go missing a decade apart from one another. Find out who investigators say is a person of interest in the case when we come back.
Get ready for that big test with Study.com. Study.com offers learning materials and test prep, even LSAT study prep guides for all of my legal nerds listening. Unfortunately, there aren't any wine study guides, and believe me, I did check. Listeners can get 30% off their first 3 months of any subscription level using the promo code CrimeOverWine. Again, that's promo code CrimeOverWine, no spaces, for 30% off your first 3 months at Study.com. Learn faster, stay motivated, study smarter with our sponsor, Study.com.
Hello, Crime Over Wine listeners. I am Rachel.
And I'm Heather.
We are the hosts of Like Mother, Like Murder.
We bring you the good, the badass, and the crime.
Each week, we bring you stories from missing and murdered
to survivors and women who empower you.
And of course, some mom talk sprinkled in.
Check us out wherever you get your podcasts at Like Mother, Like Murder.
And give us a follow on social media so that we can say hi.
Okay, love you, bye.
Okay, love you, bye.
A South Carolina teen has been missing for nearly a year. Ayanna Cleveland was last seen in Greenville on October 13, 2023. The 15-year-old is described as a black girl with brown eyes and black hair. However, it's in pink braids on her missing persons poster. She's about 5'2" and weighs about 120 pounds. If you have any information about Ayanna's location, contact the Greenville County Sheriff's Office at 864-271-5210.
A $5,000 reward is now being offered for information into the disappearance of a missing Pennsylvania woman. Joey Lynn Offit was last seen at her home in Sykesville on July 4th, 2007. Police say 8 days after she was last seen, a loud explosion at her home woke neighbors around 4 a.m., and they discovered her house was on fire. When the fire was put out, crews found the body of a baby in the bathtub. DNA identified the 6-week-old baby boy as Offit's son. While the baby's cause of death couldn't be determined, investigators did determine that the baby was dead before the fire started. Investigators determined the fire was set with an accelerant. Joey was discovered missing at the time of the fire. There was no indication that she was home when the fire started. Her purse and ID were found in the rubble. Joey's 2 other children, ages 2 and 9, were not at home at the time of the fire and were staying with relatives. A couple days after the fire, Joey's car was found abandoned at an apartment complex where she used to live. There was no sign of her being there, and no one remembered seeing her recently. Police believe foul play is involved and that Joey is now dead. She was declared legally dead at her mother's request in 2016, with the date of her death being July 12th, 2007, which was the day of the fire. If you have any information about Joey, call 1-800-4PA-TIPS. A $5,000 reward is being offered. All right, now to a crazy story out of Ohio where detectives are now giving the cold case disappearances of a divorced couple a fresh look. Melvin Shoemaker was reported missing by a neighbor in Parkman Township in May of 1994. He hadn't seen the 71-year-old for a while. Investigators say everything in the house seemed to be in order. His cars were there, personal belongings were there, clothes were there. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Melvin lived alone at the time and worked as a welder. He had nearly $1 million in the bank. He had been divorced from his wife Florence since 1978. Melvin's case grew cold until about a decade later. Detectives wanted to track down Florence and the couple's son Glenn to obtain DNA samples and more information about Melvin's disappearance. But they couldn't find Florence. No one had seen her since 2003. Just like her husband, Florence seemingly just disappeared off of the face of the earth. Florence was living with Glenn in Heron Township at the time of her disappearance. Family members told investigators that the two were close, but Glenn never reported his mother missing. Florence worked as a home health aide, and when family members would call or look for her, Glenn would say that she was taking care of someone or that she was taking care of someone. You know, she was either over here or over there, but investigators say Glenn would never provide an address or phone number as to where she was. Family members say that they would leave messages at the home and their calls were never returned. After discovering Florence's disappearance, investigators went back to Melvin's home and dug up the septic system to see if there was any type of remains or clues, but they found nothing. Now, looking more into Glenn, investigators found a history of domestic disputes between Melvin and Glenn. Records show Melvin was held at his home by Glenn for about 3 months around the time of the divorce in the late 70s. Deputies responded to the home and found Melvin was padlocked inside of the house. Now, fast forward to 2018, investigators searched Glenn's home, the same one that he had lived in with his mother. The search spanned several days. The home didn't have running water, electricity, or phone, and it had dirt floors in the house. Investigators say there were padlocks on the outside of the home. The search turned up nothing. So if you have any information on Melvin or Florence Shoemaker's disappearances, you can call the local sheriff's office detectives line at 440-279-2084. Now, a couple of things. Glenn is now 68 years old. He's never been charged with anything, and while he has been interviewed several times, he's not really been cooperative. When they asked him for a DNA sample, he declined. Now, Glenn did get his dad's money after his dad went missing, and Glenn is considered a person of interest in the case. Now, Florence and Melvin, they would be in their 90s and 100s now. And so I think something that kind of gives both of these cases a little bit of hope is in Ohio, there's a group of retired detectives and prosecutors and analysts. They're kind of all retired now, but obviously they have a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience, and they kind of meet up every once in a while, and they volunteer their time to look at cases that have grown cold, just to kind of see if, you know, a fresh set of eyes and you know, kind of minds put together will kind of help maybe drum up some new leads or something like that. But yeah, I've never heard of something like this happening. It's just like the padlocks, like Heather, I'm kind of getting like elder abuse almost like vibes out of that.
No one thought that was weird. None of the neighbors noticed padlocks, or a delivery person didn't notice padlocks on these doors and go, seems not right to me. You know, see something, say something. But I mean, again, like they're not the ones who likely killed these people.
Yeah.
But it's the padlocks were on the outside of the home, right?
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, obviously, if you think about it, you're going to try and keep whatever's in, not the other way around where you're trying to keep things out. You're trying to keep what's inside.
Yeah, that's so bizarre, and it's so weird that they didn't put together they were both missing. That this man was just able to say, "Oh, she's off doing this," and everyone was like, "Okay," until
Mm-hmm.
recently.
I know. And like I think about I talk to my family members like multiple times a day. Like, you know what I mean? And it's like if someone misses my FaceTime or something and they don't get back to me, like I within a few hours I'm like, "Why haven't you called me back?"
I know if my mom doesn't answer me, like within 20 minutes, I'm calling and being like, "Are you alive?" I was just gonna say it's the year of our Lord and Savior 2024. You don't like just fall off the face of the earth.
Well, yeah, and for it to happen not once but twice, like it's insane. But I am hoping that this group of retired detectives and professionals can really like come together and figure something out, because unfortunately, like, time is not on their side here. Evidence is going away when you're talking about something physical.
Yeah, what kind of hurts my heart here is Glenn doesn't seem that hurt by his parents not being around, by not cooperating. So I mean, I granted they would be in their 90s and 100s now, and not that many people live that long. So maybe he accepted. They died. I won't know what happened, but not being cooperative is always a red flag.
Yeah, I agree. And it makes you wonder if his mom had any money, because if he got like what his dad had, I wonder, like, possible motive is like the money ran out and time to see what mom has. I don't know.
Didn't you say the dad had like $1 million in his account there or something?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not an investigator, but let's check Glenn's spending habits and his bank account.
Well, and the fact that the house like didn't have like any running water, no electricity, no nothing. So like where else was it going? Because it clearly wasn't being spent on the house.
I don't even think legally you can. Like, I think for a house to be inhabitable legally, you have to have running water, and I think electricity. Maybe not electricity because some people live off the grid, but I don't know. I feel like for a house to be considered inhabitable in areas that are governed by inspectors and stuff, those things have to be functioning.
Unless he was like living in another place, and maybe just keeping this as
As what, a torture house?
I,
Like,
I don't know. It's crazy.
and then you said that family had called to ask where his mom was. Like, I'm guessing they're out of state or further away.
Yeah.
I feel really bad for them too, because they probably have a guilt of, man, I wish I had done more sooner or pushed harder for answers or something. But
Okay, so this Chardonnay, you say it's growing on you, Heather?
it's grown on me. It is really smooth. It's easy to drink.
Mm-hmm.
The flavor is not my favorite, but it's not the worst thing I've had either.
Yeah, I agree with you on that.
And it's not one of those things that I think pairing it with like a food or sweet treat would make it better.
Mm-hmm.
You could, but I don't think that that's going to improve it. I am pouring more though.
Heather's going in for another glass.
I will say I would give Freakshow another try on a different one.
Yeah.
Because I'm also not a big Chardonnay girly, but I do love the mermaid on the bottle.
It's very detailed. For like a wine label, like a lot went into that.
There's a bearded lady, a tattooed woman, a strong man, like all of these typical ye old sideshow acts of P.T. Barnum abusing people days.
I have their website pulled up, and they have, like, I think this is their only white wine. No. I lied. It's not. I just hadn't scrolled down enough. Ooh, they've got all sorts of... They've got a rosé. They've got a Sauvignon Blanc. They've got a sparkling.
I thought we had tried one of their reds a while ago, but I could be wrong. Maybe I just keep looking at Freakshow.
Pretty good wine. Pretty good episode. Some crazy cases this week.
We got the head scratchers going on this week. Last week was just like soul-crushing, depression-inducing cases. This week's are sad, but mostly head-scratching of...
I agree.
There's a lot of questions here.
Well, we thank everyone for listening. If you can't get enough of Crime Over Wine, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
And we will see you next Monday for the next episode of Crime Over Wine Weekly.
Proud member of the Podnuga Network.